The world held its breath, listening to that whisper coming from Kiev and Washington. A plan was on the table. The price of peace was land. Ukraine's fate was hanging on the edge of uncertainty.
A tense silence suddenly engulfed international backchannels, every breath heard seeming to whisper a great secret. The claims suggested that US President Donald Trump was preparing a shock-inducing peace plan to end the war in Ukraine. As the details of this plan moved beyond mere whispers, they began to echo across the world, stirring a curiosity mixed with fear. At the heart of the plan lay an unthinkable price for Ukraine: territorial concessions. If these claims were true, a negotiation loomed that would profoundly shake Kyiv's pride and sovereignty. Would this offer truly bring peace, or would it merely mark the beginning of a new cycle of conflict? This uncertainty carried the potential to deeply affect not only Ukraine, but the future of all Europe, leaving leaders on both sides of the Atlantic sleepless.
According to news sources and diplomats speaking on condition of anonymity, information leaking from President Trump's campaign team was outlining the key points of the plan. Ukraine would formally recognize the Donbas and Crimea regions under Russian control since 2014 as Russian territory in exchange for a ceasefire and an end to the war. Moreover, abandoning Ukraine's goal of NATO membership was also among the claims on the table. These terms were like a dagger plunged into the heart of Ukraine's struggle for sovereignty. A nation that had fought for years to preserve its territorial integrity was now facing the prospect of surrendering what it held most sacred in the name of peace. Every word of these claims felt like a cold wave spreading across Kyiv, driving each citizen into deep anxiety. But were these allegations merely rumors, or were such scenarios truly being discussed in the secret corridors between Washington and Moscow, with the silent consent of international law?
This peace plan could fundamentally reshape not only territory, but also Ukraine's future security architecture. Why President Trump would put such a radical proposal on the table was creating a major question mark on the global stage, while political analysts were trying to unravel the real reasons behind it.
President Trump's motivation rested on a complex political strategy lying beneath the surface. For President Trump, driven by the goal of remaining in the White House, the promise to end the war in Ukraine overnight could have a powerful impact on voters. In line with the America First policy, putting an end to the billions of dollars the United States has spent on this war could resonate strongly both with the domestic public and within the Republican base. As President Trump sought the opportunity to present himself as the architect of global peace, the cost of that peace could be extremely heavy, not only for Ukraine, but also for the West's security doctrine and the international legal order. This bold move by the president painted the image of a savior for many, while for others it was a dangerous signal of a rule-breaking approach that disregarded international law. Could such an attempt at imposition by one of the world's most powerful countries mark a major turning point for the future of international relations? And did President Trump's search for this solution truly take the interests of the Ukrainian people into account, or was it merely focused on his own political career?
In Kiev, within government corridors, whispers had given way to an anxious wait. Every gunshot from the front, even from afar, seemed to echo in the ears, and the smell of gunpowder, though invisible, felt as if it hung in the air. The burden on Zelenskyy's shoulders grew heavier with each passing day. The dark circles beneath his eyes were silent witnesses to sleepless nights and endless meetings. For Ukraine, territorial concessions meant not merely a geographical loss, but a betrayal of the legacy of thousands of fallen soldiers, of national identity, the spirit of independence, and the future itself. The possibility that the epic resistance against Russian aggression
could end with such an agreement sent chills through many Ukrainians, bringing the nation to the brink of collective mourning. Across the country, the voices of soldiers fighting at the front, civilians who had left their families behind, and leaders who placed national honor above all else rang out with the same message: our land is not negotiable. This resolve was a fire burning in the heart of every Ukrainian, one that would never be extinguished.
As Zelenskyy sought strong support on the international stage, President Trump's potential peace plan could cause a deep rift even among allies. Such a development might push Ukraine into an unprecedented isolation, both domestically and internationally. Tensions were also rising in European capitals. In the corridors of Brussels and the halls of Strasbourg, the strain was visible on diplomats' faces, and every handshake seemed to question what the next move would be. The condition of renouncing NATO membership directly threatened the alliance's core principles and Europe's security architecture. Some European leaders believed this plan would amount to rewarding Russia's aggression and would invite similar conflicts in the future. To them, it signaled a revival of the spirit of Munich, a painful repetition of history. Others, however, argued that peace must be achieved as soon as possible and the loss of life stopped, whatever the cost. In their view, the blood spilled each passing day wounded their consciences, placing the sanctity of peace above all else. These divisions were shaking the unity of the Western Bloc over Ukraine's fate. NATO's open-door policy and the principle of collective defense had never before faced such a severe test. Would Europe's future be shaped in the shadow of this decision? And would this international pressure force Ukraine to abandon its red lines?
Imagine this, if you were in Zelenskyy's place as well. On one side, the daily news of fallen soldiers from the front, ruined cities on every corner, and the sobs of your desperate people. Could even a will of steel bend under such weight? If the fate of an entire nation depended on a single decision you would make. On the other side, the pressure from a powerful leader, one of the most influential politicians in the world, demanding that you give up your country's territorial integrity. This was not merely a political decision, but an ethical, moral, and humanitarian dilemma, a choice that would determine the destiny of a country and the future of millions of people. In the shadow of despair, every decision taken would be etched into the pages of history and debated for generations. For you, what would come first? The homeland's soil, or a peace that ends the suffering but at a heavy price? This dilemma was the greatest test a leader could ever face.
However, as the details of this plan began to emerge, not only Ukraine's security, but that of all Eastern Europe was being called into question. Could such an offer set a precedent for Russia's future acts of aggression? Was this merely the visible tip of the iceberg, or would it trigger a new regional domino effect? These claims of secret bargaining were also being closely watched in Moscow. The Kremlin was calculating how closely this plan aligned with its own interests and how it might strengthen Russia's position on the international stage. If Ukraine were to abandon its NATO aspirations and accept territorial concessions, it could mean the fulfillment of Russia's goal of keeping Ukraine within its sphere of influence, a long-held ambition for Putin. A strategic victory over the West could usher in a new era across multiple domains, from energy markets to military balances. Yet at the same time, such an outcome could deepen Russia's international isolation and further strain its relations with the West. Was the Kremlin's silence the calm before a storm, or simply a pause while awaiting approval? This new move on Russia's chessboard could determine not only Ukraine's fate, but that of the entire world order.
Accepting the plan would not only change Ukraine's map, but would also redraw the map of global politics. On one side, a nation surrendering land in the name of peace. On the other, the image of a leader portrayed as the one who delivered peace. But could such peace be one purchased at the cost of injustice? Would it be a shame passed down to future generations, or a necessary sacrifice forced by circumstance? And If Ukraine were to reject this offer, would Western support continue, or would the country be pushed into international isolation? These questions were shaking not only Ukraine, but all of humanity, compelling world leaders to sketch new scenarios over the maps spread across their tables.
Within this equation, the future of NATO, the world's largest military alliance, was also becoming shrouded in uncertainty. Could a potential territorial concession by Ukraine call NATO's open door policy into question? Would this signal the end of the concept of collective security, or the birth of a new defense pact? History is filled with painful lessons from such peace plans. The 1938 Munich Agreement, which handed Czechoslovakia's Sudetenland to Hitler, delivered only a brief illusion of peace and ultimately led to a far greater world war. Before the ink on that agreement had even dried, the world was dragged into a much larger catastrophe. Could a similar scenario unfold in Ukraine's case? Would territorial concessions further whet Russia's appetite, or would they truly open the door to a lasting solution? These questions echoed, not only in the minds of political scientists, but in all of us who fear the repetition of history. Every decision was being made in the shadow of the past and amid the uncertainty of the future. What was truly frightening, however, was how such an agreement could affect not only Ukraine, but also small and vulnerable nations around the world. The policies of great powers have always shaped the fate of the weak. Was this a new paradigm in the international order, or merely a repetition of the old game in which might makes right? The reaction of the Ukrainian people was the most critical element in this entire equation, from Kyiv's Maidan Square to the trenches at the front, persuading a people who had refused to abandon resistance despite thousands of lives lost to give up their land for the sake of a political agreement seemed almost impossible. The belief that victory is achieved without surrendering even an inch of our land had coursed through the nation's veins, etched into the soul of every individual. In this context, how Zelenskyy would maneuver was vital not only for his own political future, but for preserving the spirit of his country and retaining the trust of his people. He was now not just a leader, but the final guardian of national honor. Every step he took would determine the fate of a nation. Yet another question loomed. How sustainable could this resistance be in the face of international pressure, economic hardship, and the weariness brought on by prolonged exhaustion? How firmly would Ukraine's allies stand in response to President Trump's peace plan? Whose interests would ultimately prevail? Was the country being pushed into a dead end filled with loneliness and the fear of betrayal? Although these claims of a secret peace plan had not yet been clarified, the uncertainty and fear they generated served as a grave warning for the future of the world. Should peace be defined as justice, or merely as the absence of conflict? And was the price paid for such peace truly worth paying? These questions echoed not only in the minds of political scientists, but in the conscience of each of us, robbing us of sleep. Was this drama a new turning point in history, or merely the beginning of a grand game? Only time and the unforgiving pages of history would provide the answers. Yet the deeper truth might emerge years later, revealed by secret documents on dusty shelves, or by witnesses speaking under the weight of remorse. And by then, might it all be too late? Or perhaps humanity would learn the necessary lesson and avoid repeating the same mistakes once again. The future would continue to take shape in the shadow of these decisions.